Hello, crafters, art journalists, and mixed media artists. I'm so excited to be here today. I'm Michelle Brown, creative director at mixedmediaart.net, and I just wanted to jump into your video feed to share a little bit of crafting love. Now, for those of you that are watching live, pop in the comments, just like Fiona and Tamara and Lorraine have. Hello, it is so lovely to have you join us. And it's just taken me so long to get around to sharing some more videos with you. There's been so much going on in the backgrounds. So I hope everyone is doing okay. I hope this can bring a little bit of crafting joy and perhaps some inspiration, because today I want to talk about adding color to your chipboard. Now, for those of you like me who've been crafting for a while, we probably have a fantastic stash of chipboard. I know over time I've got quite a stash, and even I was surprised sorting through it how much I do actually have. And for a long while, I didn't like using it because I was never quite sure what to do with it. But of course, as we always say at Mixed Media Art, we've got to know our substrates, we've got to know our materials, and I've put together a few ways that we can get them out, play with them, and then actually use them, because again, we don't want to just keep our craft supplies hidden in our stash. We want to get them out, we want to use them and make sure we're adding them to our creations, and of course, sharing that creativity and just giving ourselves that place where we can create and give ourselves that time. And, you know, that feeling of appreciation and pride in what we do. Hello, Michelle. Hi, Linda. So as we go along, if you've got any questions, pop them in the comments and we'll answer them. And we will jump in. Okay, so firstly, like everything, we want to make sure you know your supplies. So there's so many different types of chipboard. So I've got some here. The ones that we currently stock in the Mixed Media Art store are the Dina Wakley, and we've got a whole heap of the Scrap FX. But also looking through my stash, I've got some from Scrap Mats, I've got some from Lasercraft Ladies, I've got these that have been around for ages, and these are from Handprint Arts. Do you remember Lisa and Handprint Art stamps? So these were some of the ones that she had. I've also got some from Collections, so for those of you that remember Julie and all of Collections. So there's just so many different shapes that they come in, and of course you can do your own as well with your die cuts or your cutters. And so what we want to do is talk about what we're going to do and add colour to them. So the first thing, like we said, they're all slightly different. Now, these collection ones have been punched, and you can tell that because you can sort of see there's a bit of an indent there. But all the ones that have been laser cut potentially going to have a little bit of soot left on them, because that's sort of the laser cutting process. It's a strong light that actually focuses on it. So the thing you might want to do before you sort of get started is actually just give that chipboard a little bit of a clean up, just on some kitchen towel, just to take the edges off. And like everything, it's not too bad while we're getting mucky, but when we get into our final layouts, we don't want to get any of that dirtiness anywhere. And also these can smell a little bit too, again, just because of the way that they've been manufactured. So pull out your chipboard, give it a little bit of a wipe, and then we'll be ready to use it. So like everything, the great thing with mixed media, the great thing about chipboard is that we can colour it and get it to suit our background. So here's a fantastic one in the Mixed Media Art by Marlene Rainbow Journal. And here I've used the beautiful Dilutions paints, and I've used some of the shimmer ones too. Can you see that? And then I've coloured this collection's chipboard in with exactly the same paints, added a little bit of stamping, added a little bit of edging and some cotton, and see how effective that is. It comes up really well, so it's great to be able to tie our embellishments in with our backgrounds. So another one I've got here, I think this was a Scrap Mats one, and you can see here it's got a couple of different coloured paints on it, and we'll talk about that when we get to the paints. But also I've added a little bit of mark making on here as well. So it's really nice to be able to tie this in with the themes of your canvases and your art journals. But the first thing we're going to want to do, and again, you don't always have to, and it depends on what kind of chipboard it is, but I like to put down a layer of gesso first. Now I find that if we don't use gesso, that the chipboard is quite porous, and it just absorbs the ink and the paints, and it takes a lot more layers. So by just taking that extra time and putting the gesso on first, I find that it really helps. So the way that I do that is I've got a whole heap of these bits of cardboard, and I've wrapped them in the innards of cereal boxes. We've still got boys that eat lots of cereal, so we go through lots of cereal boxes, and I like to create that because what we want to do is be able to paint on here and then get it out of the way and not make a mess of our surface. So here's some of the chipboard that we've been playing with. Now, whatever kind of gesso you've got, I love this malt white one because it's quite thick. but it's also easy to use. Now I'm going to do this. You can see I've just got an old paint palette here, a knife, and one of these really cool makeup sponges just from your local chemist. I find this is the absolute best way to apply the gesso. So, like with any of our paints, we don't want to be using up the whole lot. We just want to be getting a little bit out with our palette knife. And then we want to get the lid back on and set it aside so that's not drying out while we're mucking around. Now, our little sponge, we want to take the square end. We want to dab it in, dab it off to get that nice even coat. And then we want to start applying it to our chipboard. Now when you get going, you can sort of get quite a bit lined up and do this all at once. Just get it started there. Hold on to one side. Then by the time you've done a few, the first one will be dry enough to head back and to add a little bit more on. So even though the sponge takes up a fair bit of gesso, the chipboard actually doesn't, but it really does just help it to seal it. And then as we add those colours in these next layers, it'll really help to make sure that that colour sits on top and we're not wasting our ink or our paints trying to get the colour that we're after. And you could certainly use a paintbrush with this as well. I just find sometimes with gesso and a paintbrush it adds a lot of lines onto it and it gives it that texture. Again, if that's the texture you're looking for, that's great. If you wanted a bit more of a smooth surface, I find that sponge, and you see that detail there, it actually goes on quite smooth. Sometimes leaves a few like little bubbles, but I find if you just go over that as it gets dry, just sort of keep going around. And then we have just that really nice thin layer of gesso. So that's the first thing I'd encourage you to do. And if you don't have gesso, you can always use a little bit of white paint. But I think as you're getting more and more into mixed media, maybe not the first lot of things you buy, but I think certainly soon after the second, they're the things that you want to add. There's some gesso for your undercoating. There's some great techniques with that as well. And like we said, we love this Mont Marte one because it's nice and thick. It's really good value. You get a big tub that lasts a while, although I know some of you have managed to go through your stash. And there we go. And then just rinse off the sponge when we're done and set those aside. So like I said, so now we can pick up our whole thing and take it aside. So the next thing we're going to do is use some inks. So here's some little bits and pieces that I've already got gesso on and already let dry. So this one's a collections one, I think. These are ones that we've cut. I think that was a handprint one. So with any inks we can do direct from the ink pad or we can use our little sponges. And again, just like you would with background card, we can add some different colours, we can shade. But again, the great thing about this is that we can then do it and we know that it's going to work with our backgrounds as well. Because there's nothing more frustrating with buying some really nice embellishments and then finding out that we don't have anything else that matches it. And that's actually, I'm sure I've told you the story before, one of the reasons why I started mixed media art, because I was so frustrated that if you didn't buy the company's paper with their ribbon, with their ink, with their embellishments, well, you couldn't match it with anything else. So you can see there, I'm just going around and just building up those layers. And again, depending on how dark or light you want it. There we go. So that's giving it a background colour. But of course, what we can do is add some interest by stamping onto it. Didn't grab a stamp, I'll just grab a stamp. Oh, look at this one. First one I grabbed, pear one. This was a collections one that I bought ages and ages ago. So I'm going to use the darker blue stamp and the ink. And this is a magnesium blue. And these really cute little ink pads come in sets of 4. And it's just such a nice way to add your colours on. And there we go. So we've added a little bit of interest to that. And again, we can always just add that little bit extra. And by using that lighter background in the colours, and then of course, we always like adding an edge to something, don't we? So just using that director paper, going around. And actually with the chipboard with that bit of thickness, it is sometimes nice to cover that edge. just so it doesn't sort of stand out so much when we add it to the background. And like we're saying, because this already got gesso on it, we know that the ink helps sit on top and it doesn't soak in. So that is our first way of adding colour to our chipboard, is with inks. Okay, our second way is with some paints. So I've grabbed some of my favourite colours of Delusions here. I've got the vibrant turquoise, the Calypso teal, and then the Calypso teal in shimmer as well. And I thought this might be a nice way of putting a few different colours together. So again, I've got my sponge. I just grabbed 2 for the different colours to start off with. That's the shimmer one. We'll start off with the other colour. And again, it's taken me a while to realise that sometimes being just that little bit patient with these techniques and going slowly actually does give you a better result. Who knew? So again, a little bit of paint onto the sponge and then just adding it on. What brand of inks am I using? So these inks are the Arager archival ones. Like I said, these are the minis and we're selling them in sets of 4, so you can get a collection of different colours in each set. And these are great because they're waterproof, so when you stamp them, we know if we spritzed over them or wanted to put some layers on, the ink's not going to move. So we love the Ranger archival inks. Okay, so with the paints, we're just going to add that little bit on. And again, you can just keep building up those layers. Putting one colour. You really don't need a lot of paint as well. That's why it does go quite a way. Then I'm actually not even changing that sponge. I'm just adding that next colour in. And just giving it a bit. And you can see, you might be able to see there, the paint's actually quite getting soaken up. That's really great English, Michelle. The paint is getting soaked in to it. And that gesso is just really helping. And again, picking it up, getting those sides covered. So when we stick it on, oops, that's why sometimes it's good to have a few on the go, because we get one done and then the other next. And then what I'm going to do is use that shimmer paint. So this is the Delusions paint, same colours as their original series, but it's just got that little bit of metallic shimmer in it. And it really is a nice way to help catch the light and add a little bit of a highlight. So what I'm going to do with this clean sponge, and again, just put it on that tiny bit, is just putting a little bit around the edges to give it a bit of a highlight. Though quite often in my mixed media, I start off with a little bit, then decide, oh, maybe it needs just a little bit more here and there. So we want to just add that little bit. Not sure if you can see that in the light. In real life, you can just sort of see it. You see that catching? And that's what those metallic and those iridescent paints do. They just give that little bit of interest. There we go. I'm going to let that dry before I add any more. She says adding a little bit more. So there we go. There's our second way of adding our colour to our chipboard, is using our paints and then using a sponge so we can get that nice even effect. Again, you're more than welcome to use a paintbrush, but I find that just leaves a few more lines. So again, if you're going for texture, that's great. If you're wanting something a bit smoother, then the sponge is definitely the way to go. Okay, so we've done a layer of gesso, we've done some ink, we've done some paints, and next, bring that back. We're going to use some foils. Now, the thing that I loved about these deco foils and why we stocked them in the first place was that it gives us a chance, oh, there it is, had another one somewhere, to apply them in so many different ways. Now, there's a paste that you can add on a gel that dries sticky, but also this works just as well with the pen as well. So for those of you that had bought the adhesive pen, so what we can actually do, again, we've already got that layer of gesso on. Yay, foil, says Tamara, yes. Foils just add that really nice. So you can see here I've actually painted under this first and then put the foil on top, and it just gives it such a 3D effect. So this one's already got, like I said, some gesso on it. And what we want to do is just get that glue out of the bottle, or like I said, or use the gel. Just add enough on, and then we need to let it dry. So thankfully, here's some that I prepared earlier. I've got the laminator going over to the side. So what we're going to do, these foils come in 5 pages of 6 inches by 12 inches. So you get so much foil. But for our demonstrations at the shows, we had a whole heap I've cut up into little bits. So here's another cog. I'm not sure if that's a scrap mats one. And again, gesso, and it's got a layer of the adhesive on it that's already dry. Then I'm going to sit it in my little sandwich. I'm going to put that on it. And then I'm just going to pop it through the laminator. And again, the great thing about these is that they can be used with any laminator, or you can also use them cold as well. So the new two-use medium allows it to be used hot or cold. So that makes it nice and easy. Here's that was another one I put ink on. Actually, I think that one might have been paint. I see, I'm just having so much fun playing, but you can see how I can slowly build up a few different colours. So there we go. That comes out of the laminator. I like to give it just a few little minutes to cool down. And then the magic is revealed. Look, oh, look at that. Can you see how shiny that is? Can I get the light to catch? Can you see that? Oh, that's so pretty. And look, there are a few little bits I didn't quite get. So yeah, maybe if you put a layer of paint underneath, or of course you could touch it up. That's probably a little bit too shiny or grungy for some of my things, so I might need to add a little bit of paint onto that. But how cool does that look? Okay, let's do this heart. I'll do this one. So again, little heart, layer of gesso, layer of adhesive. And again, this is just using that adhesive pen, the Deco File one. You can see how much use we've got out of it over the last few years. So putting it in the little sandwich, always with this foil, put the coloured side up. And then into the laminator. And again, the thing that I love about this is you can use it on double-sided tape, you can use it on the adhesive, you can use the gel to put through stencils onto your art journal, and then you can use a hot iron. Hi, Helen. Yeah, perfect glitter for you. It is so pretty, isn't it? Look at it. It almost looks like it's been punched out of some sort of metal. So again, that's what's great about the chipboard. You can dress it up in so many different ways. Okay, let's see how the heart went. This might be a bit grungier, I think, being more of a flat surface. Okay. Oh, there we go. Not too bad at all. So the other thing we can always do if we wanted that, we could stick a word across it or just touch it up with a pen. I had a pen here, and I've moved everything away. So yeah, so there's just so many different ways. And again, mixed media, you don't mind that little bit of grunge in it. And you can see that this heart that we put the adhesive on before is still quite wet. So we want to leave that to sit until it's almost dry. That's the way that those ones work best. Okay, so we've now added gesso to our chipboard. We've added ink. We've added paints. We've added foils. Our last thing is, again, something I'm sure you've all got. Embossing powders, our good old Versamark inks and our embossing powders. Okay, I'm going to put down the heat mat because I really don't want to burn my table. I'm quite good at doing that. And grabbing some tweezers because this stuff can get really hot. So the embossing powder we stock is the Emerald Creek one, and it's really great. It's grungy, it's chunky. And here's one that I did having a little play. And I don't know whether you can see that again, but it almost looks like an enamel. It's just so nice. So let's grab a few little shapes. So again, our chipboard, adding just that little bit of gesso to help seal it. Now, for those of you that haven't come across Versamark ink before, it's basically a glue pad. It's clear. But what it does is allow us to get the embossing powder stuck on until we get it heated. So there you go. You can feel it's actually quite sticky. Now I've got some scrap paper here. Always have a handful of scrap picture to page maps lying around. from our show in 2019. So we can see, you can see it there, it's sticky. Put that away. So the Versamark is a really good one to have in your toolkit. So again, we're just going to sprinkle a little bit of that on. And the challenge is to get a good coverage. But again, the great thing about embossing powder is if you don't get it right the first go, there's always a chance to add a little bit more, and I'll show you how to do that. Okay, so let's get those out. Knock off the excess. Knock off the excess. Again, this is why we're using paper, so we can just then fold that up. Pop it back in the container. That's what a little bit goes a long way with embossing powders. I think so many of us started paper crafting by being absolutely amazed at how the embossing goes. Okay, now we've got a heat gun. Now hopefully this isn't going to be too loud. Let's see. If it is, I can always turn off the audio for a bit. Now what we need to do is use the heat gun. Now particularly, again, know your materials and your tools. This one needs to be moved around because we don't want to melt it too much in any one spot. We can see. Now again, chipboard takes a little bit more to warm up than it would for normal card as well. You can start seeing that, oh, it's really hot. Start seeing that that's melting around the edge, and again we just keep moving it. We don't want to heat any one bit in particular. And then we can see it slowly moving from the outside in, and then there's heart started because it was close to. There we go. Now, if we weren't really happy with that, we wanted to add a little bit more. Remember when we had all that ultra thick embossing powder? All we would do is just go in, add a little bit more onto the top, particularly while it's still hot. Let's get that out of the way. We don't want to heat set the whole pot. I haven't actually done that yet. Has anyone done that? Whether it'd be possible, it probably would take a fair bit of heat. Then again, just slowly warming it up, keeping it moving because we don't want anything to catch on fire. Again, these heat-proof mats are really good for protecting your surface. And we can see that that just melts in and gives it that extra little. There we go. I think this one hopefully is cool enough to pick up. Oh, where are we? So there we go. You can see there. Can you see? It just has, it looks like enamel. It's just the prettiest surface. And that's just straight pink, and you could always add a little bit of other colour. Oh, I think I've got some other colours. Hang on, hold there. I'll grab another colour. Don't you just love that? This is always the way to create. You just have suddenly a really good idea of something that's going to work really well. Because what's a flower with one colour? Let's add another colour. So this one is, I'm pretty sure we still got this in stock. This is the, what is it called? Fluorescent hot pink. And this one is the fluorescent yellow orange. So I wonder if we heat that up again. Nothing like experimenting among friends, is there? Now, I'm not going to touch it to see how hot it is because I think that would be a bit of a mistake. Just adding a little bit, kind of into the middle. Because again, one colour is boring. That's why we love mixed media. We can add colours, we can add light and dark shades, we can add contrasts, add a bit of metallic or a bit of glimmer. There we go. I'll lift that up and you see how it's just melting in. Oh, isn't that pretty? Now, of course, if you were a little bit more careful, you could probably get it more in the centre. But how gorgeous is that? Okay, can you see that? Yeah, you can see the light reflecting off it. It's just so shiny. Now, the other thing is really the embossing powder, it really is sitting on top and not down the sides. So what I probably would do before I glue that on was get a marker and just take the add the colour onto the edge, just to give it that little bit of interest. Okay. So we've done so much already today. So we've talked about different types of chipboard. We've talked about adding the gesso. We've added some inks. We've added some paint. We've added some foil. Where did the foil ones go? Oh, here. I knew that. We added some foil. And then we added that embossing paper as well. And like I said, they're just really, really easy to be able to line up. So the last thing is then how do we attach them? Because again, that can be some of our challenge as well, not knowing. Now, I find with the chipboard, you do need a good adhesive. We don't really just want to stick it on with double-sided tape. That tends to lift off. So, as always, a good matte medium or even PVA works okay. And then what we want to do, actually what I did when I added this one, is to grab one of your stamping blocks. Now these large acrylic blocks have got quite a bit of weight in it. So here we just added the gel medium onto the back, sat it where we wanted it to, and then sat that on top and then left it overnight. Just gave it that little bit of weight and then made sure that it was really well attached. So we can see that that is definitely not coming off anytime soon. And we can see here then I've added that little bit of edge around it. So once it's dry, the other thing, of course, we can do is if we go back to this one, and I've got a few others to show you. So this is a scrap mats one. Now this one I had with the beautiful Dina Wakley copper, but it was a little bit too bright. So I added some of the umber into it to take that shine off it. But what I've also done, again, can you see, I've added this little bit of shadow into it as well. Now the chipboard does naturally sit up a little bit and of course does naturally create its own shadow. But what we want to do is also encourage the viewer to really have it standing out. So we added a bit of water-soluble crayon. And then, like we said, a few little dots there. Let me show you some of the others I've got. So these three canvases were all part of the one series. This, I think, was a Lasercraft Lady one. And again, painted them the same with the bronze and then a little bit of that umber just to take the brightness off it. And then just that little bit of shadow. And that really helps place your image as well. So you can see I've added some grounding here. I've placed it in that third spot. And then added, again, I think that's a scrap mats word. They've got beautiful chipboard words as well. Added that on top. And this one, I think this was Laser Cut Ladies too. So again, same thing. That beautiful paint. A little bit of shading around it. And it really just does help bring it all together. And then the last one, and this is a little bit too big to go into the camera, but this one, oh, that looks like it needs a bit of attention. So this one, again, using some paint and then using a little bit of foil on the top too. And it's given it, I don't know whether you can see that texture, but it's got an amazing amount of texture on it. It's just really grungy and wrinkly, and it's got two coloured foils, I think. And again, there's another one, I think that was a collections one that I've done in a similar colour paint. So again, it's great so you can tie your embellishments, your words, and all your different bits and pieces together. Okay. So I checked my list. I think that is everything on it. So let's jump back over. Well, everyone, I hope you enjoyed that session. So I really do encourage you to go back into your stash, pull out all that chipboard that I'm sure you've had hidden away for ages. If you don't have gesso, then perhaps apply just a little bit of a white paint, or again, know your materials. That's what we always say here at Mixed Media Art. So try putting a bit of ink on, and if you're finding that it's falling away too fast, perhaps try a little bit of white paint or some gesso if you've got it. Of course, let that dry fully before you put anything on top. So try your paints. Try your inks, try a combination of paint and then ink with stamping on top. Try your foils, use that adhesive in as many different ways as you can think of. And if it's too thick to go through your laminator, if you've got an iron or some other way of applying heat, that'll also give you a really good effect. And then, like we said, try your embossing powders, because most of us have got some somewhere. And if you don't like it the first time, just keep adding layers. And again, just watch your fingers. They do get very hot as you do that. And then it gives you that beautiful effect. And then whether you're putting that on a card, on a canvas, or even in an art journal. Someone did ask about adding chipboard to an art journal, because we know over time they get thicker and thicker. I think if you were sort of careful about it. I don't think you'd want every page in your art journal to have chipboard on, but if you had, say, 2 or 3 and then you had to take out of some other pages, that would work out okay as well. If you have any other questions, pop them here in the comments. We'll have all the links to this stuff that's on our website at mixedmediaart.net, somewhere near this video, and we look forward to catching up with you soon. So this is Michelle signing off. We hope you have a crafty day.